Recently, a controversy regarding the anime Uzaki-chan wa asobitai, aka Uzaki-chan wants to hang out, caused some discussion among the anime community. Basically, the internet is split into two factions. The outraged Twitter mobs who think Uzaki-chan is the representation of sexism and female objectification in anime, and the defenders who think it's idiotic to think that way because Usagi-chan is fictional. I don't agree, or should I say disagree, with either side. In fact, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Now, before I get into why I think they're not mutually exclusive, let me introduce this controversy. From what I've heard, it started with an ad poster from the Japanese Red Cross, with Usagi-chan saying something like, "Senpai, you still haven't donated blood. Are you perhaps scared of it?" Now, of course, this poster is made to attract a certain group of people, as far as I know, namely virgin otakus, since blood donation requires you to not have had a new sexual partner for 6 months. I think as long as the ad does what it's set out to do, and in fact does increase blood donation, then I'm all for it. It doesn't harm anybody, it's encouraging something good, but you do have to be delusional to not understand why people are uncomfortable with this. And don't give me the bullcrap that, "Are you saying there aren't women with big breasts? This is representation for women with big breasts." You know what that sounds like? That sounds exactly like when Netflix forces LGBT characters in their shows, and while nobody cares whether a character is gay or not, we just don't want being gay the only trait of the character. The same goes for anime. Just because a character has big breasts, that doesn't mean she should just be a walking sex joke, or that her boobs should jiggle like water balloons even though she has clothes on. How many goddamn anime have you seen where just because a girl has big breasts, she's constantly under sexual harassment or sexual assault? Is it funny? Maybe the first 2 times, especially in comedy anime, but nowadays, having big breasts in anime equals getting them accidentally grabbed by the main character who says some cliche-ass shit like, "Hey, that's so soft, I wonder what it is," as he goes on squeezing the boobs, and the girl goes completely red and waits for a couple more seconds of groping before she slaps him or pushes him away or some shit like that. Now, at this point, I'm not exactly talking about Usaki-chan specifically, although these things do happen in the anime as well. This is a problem with anime in general, in my opinion. The industry tries way too hard to sexualize women when I don't need it. I do like some good old anime titties and thighs. I'm also a man of culture, but you don't need to shove them in my face, you feel me? Like, when a girl is talking, instead of the camera showing her face, we sometimes see it from her ass or tits for some reason. You tell me you're comfortable watching shit like this in front of your family? What if every time a dude speaks, and the camera just stays on his dick? Maybe that'll be funny for the first 2-3 times, but just imagine that it becomes the norm, where male characters dresses like the Pillar Man, and the camera just constantly focuses on their dick and ass when they speak. I assure you that, while it would be funny for the first anime that does it, it gets old real soon, especially when the anime isn't comedy. Something else that people also always talk about is whether anime encourages pedophilia. This is of course because most animes are set in high school or have underage protagonists. The girls would sometimes dress in very sexy outfits and often show up in shower scenes and changing scenes and of course accidental groping scenes. Now before I get into that, I want to talk about Persona 5. I love the game, and I recently finished Persona 5 Royal, which is for now my personal favorite game. And for those of you who's not played it, you play as a 16-year-old Japanese high school boy and you get to date some girls, ranging from 15 to 17 years old. Now, with or without this dating feature, the fans would call the girls waifus. And some people find it absolutely repulsive that fans of Persona 5 would call a 15-year-old girl a waifu. This reminds me of some of Chris Hansen's To Catch a Predator, where the old creep texts the supposed 15-year-old girl and asks her to marry him. But it doesn't feel like that to me. When I watch an anime or play a JRPG, I'm immersed in it, and I almost always look at it from the perspective of the main character. And of course, that is if the anime or game is well written. And because I was once a 16-year-old high school boy, I can easily put myself in his shoes and see it from his perspective, and daydream about going on adventures with my friends. So, when the anime or game has a girl who's very likable or very cute, I find her attractive from the main character's perspective. Some scenarios, however, do bother me very much, such as when the protagonist is an adult and his love interest is underage. Even in fiction, I'm still very bothered by that. And I also hate the I look like a 5-year-old and act like an 8-year-old, but I'm in fact a 500-year-old witch. So it's okay to fap to me. If you are attracted to a character like that, you literally cannot justify it. If she acts mature and actually behaves like a woman who's lived 500 years and you find her attractive, fine, I think that's justifiable, since there are indeed dwarves or people who can't physically grow up in this world. But if you find that shrieking 8-year-old voice and personality to be attractive, man, you got problems. Now, having said this, I do want to point out something very obvious that for some reason nobody acknowledges. There is no such thing as encouraging pedophilia. You are either a pedo or you're not. You don't watch an anime and realize, hey, I want to grow kids. Pedophilia is a mental illness, since normal people would grow up to find other grown-ups attractive, while pedophiles fail to do that, or at least fail to grow out of liking younger people. In short, I think fan service of underage characters is in general, although not always, bad for anime, not because it encourages pedophilia, but because it's mostly bad writing and cheapens the story greatly. Now let's get back to Uzaki-chan Wants to Hang Out. There are a few things that should be pointed out. First of all, this anime is set in a college, not in a high school, so she's not underage to begin with. Personally, I do think it's fresh to finally have anime set in college, not only because it just makes so much more sense that way, but also because now I can finally call the girls waifus without feeling morally conflicted. I'm joking, of course. As I said before, if I find a girl attractive, I do so in the MC's perspective. This is why I can never find an underage anime girl attractive if the MC is a grown man. Anyway, Uzaki-chan is also a comedy. It doesn't try to hide the fact that it's full of vulgar humor. Almost like the infamous To Love Ru. I mean, just look at her. And look at what's written on her t-shirt. Sugoi dekai, which literally means really big. Come on. This show is meant to be full of sexist jokes, and is not pretending to be otherwise. For this reason, I'm okay with shows like Uzaki-chan. I'm not a huge fan of it, I'm not a huge fan of this genre, but I don't typically find anything wrong with it. What I do have a problem with is when an anime pretends to be serious and have women with high positions of power, but still have them dress like a street hooker and behave like one too. I remember very vividly an anime called K that I watched many years ago. The first season was very fancy. The animation was incredible. And although the story was not interesting enough for me to remember, the art struck me as exceptional at the time. When the second season for K came out a few years later, I had already forgotten about basically everything in the first season. But because the first season gave me such a good impression, I decided to start watching the second season. And no kidding, like 5 minutes into the show or whatever, the camera just can't stop focusing on the woman soldier or whoever she was, showing her tits bounce every possible opportunity. I couldn't even finish the first episode, and honestly, I was so disgusted by it. I've always said this to people. If I'm that horny, I'd go straight for porn or hentai, jack off for a while and be done with it. I don't want shit like this to ruin an anime that I would have enjoyed. I do want to emphasize that I'm all for creativity and freedom of expression in art. And although it's definitely a bit of a stretch to use representation as an excuse for anime girls with overly large breasts, and I do also hate lazy fan service, I don't think artists should be penalized for some drawings. We all have tastes. Even if I don't like your art, I have no right to stop you from making it. This is the basic right of individuals in a democratic society. But do I think Uzaki-chan Wants to Hang Out is a shallow anime, probably not worth watching? Yes, if you want to watch a comedy anime that's set in college, that does have fan service, just not shoved in your face, go watch Grand Blue. It's extremely funny and probably my favorite anime in 2018. Having said so, if you do find Usagi-chan an enjoyable anime and completely disagree with me, that's fine too. As I said, people have different tastes. And you may find Grand Blue boring as well. And we can agree to disagree.